Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Miller, and this is the Gaming Dialogue News. A warm welcome to all of our friends, fans, community members, participants, viewers, and everyone watching our podcast around the world on different platforms. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being our very dedicated community members. Thank you for being also very supportive of our charitable fundraiser for Mind Charity, a British-based charity that helps people who are experiencing mental health problems. Today has been a very good day. It did start out very early, and a beautiful bright sunshine out here in the local area where I live, and really proper summery late spring type of day after a period of lengthy drizzle, cold weather, cloud, damp. You know it all if you are living in England, and suddenly from fairly nippy cold weather we've gone down to I wouldn't say astronomical heights as far as the temperature is concerned, but certainly 22-23 degrees make the atmosphere totally different and the environment around you a lot more pleasant. So yeah, a good day so far. Quite a lot of admin to do, lots of news coming in, lots of news, and loads of things really associated with the closure of 4 studios, which we talked about yesterday. So really a lot to get through, a lot to talk about. So let's just crack on, shall we? How is everybody doing? How is everyone here today? Are you guys playing some games? Are you up and about? Are you enjoying your sunshine if you're based in Britain, or in England, I should say? What are you doing actually? Have you watched Eurovision? Have you been up and about? Are you watching football? Are you going to be watching the Champions League final? Loads of questions, and ping us a message. Make sure you get engaged with us here and tell us basically about your activities today, or indeed whatever you've been doing during the last couple of days. So all good. Just keep them coming. I had a few messages really in response to my podcast yesterday, and I did hear that there's been a lot of dissatisfaction and concern, a genuine concern expressed by some of our community members and followers. So in one message, one of our community members, I will not obviously pronounce the names and IDs for the obvious reason, our friend asked, well, what on earth is going on? 1,600 cuts recently at Microsoft, now the closure of 4 studios, Sony shelving people, Bungie losing some of their premium staff. What next? Well, it's hard to tell, and it's really very difficult to give a rundown as to why this is happening. Sadly, the way I see it is the changes and certainly the layoffs have become a major trend in video gaming industries, and there are many reasons for that. When you hear 4 studios closing, all 4 being part of a Microsoft group of developers, you think it's the same reason, but actually it may not be. There may be quite a different selection of reasons for every one of them. It happens at the same time as they're obviously balancing the books, looking at the accounts. But I can't understand for the life of me that this is now a trend, and we see this across the board in the vast majority of both publishers and developers, and you really wonder what the main reason is. I don't know the answer, and I'm also baffled as to why it is so severe and why it is persisting. But I can certainly tell you, in Britain, we are considered to be one of the most developed industrial nations on earth, and we are shoulder to shoulder with the other big boys. We are suffering immensely, every one of us. The reason for that is the cost of living, the prices, everything's gone through the roof. Unbelievably expensive things which you would otherwise use every single day, varying from your local travel, the use of buses and underground, to the cost of your property, your rent, your mortgage. Then it's the energy bills which have skyrocketed. They've gone through the roof. And everyone who is either renting or living at some property needs to pay massive amounts to those energy providers every single month. And the list just goes on and on. Food as well has gone up and up. I always, due to the work hours and commitments, would go and have my meals at various public places, restaurants, cafes, you name it. And that all had to go to oblivion, because in our area, and also in London, in central London, you have restaurants decreasing prices by almost 100%. In some instances, even more than that. And that's not really livable and affordable for the vast majority of people. So, from being able to dine out and have meals at certain places, I had to be resorting to something else, which is my domestic cooking. Not to say that I'm not a good chef. I can cook literally anything, and I've had a lot of practice with sort of master chef abilities while I was in my youth. So I'm not really bothered. On the other hand, it's a time factor. If you are doing podcasting, if you're preparing, doing academic work, or doing anything really, there isn't enough time, and it's just a change I had to apply to my everyday living. And it's a change of direction, the way you organize your day, what you do, where you go, and all of that, one thing after another. It just changed everything. Well, I'm not the only one. Every one of my friends, colleagues, associates, neighbors, compatriots, citizens is experiencing exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter whether you are extremely wealthy or perhaps on the other side of the spectrum. You are experiencing the same kind of cost, which means it is expensive for everyone. And guess what? Video game industries are also experiencing exactly the same. They're on the same boat, right? And the difficulties they have is, like what I've heard from Microsoft yesterday, they need to be prioritizing their prime time projects, the projects that are likely to be giving a very good turnover or returns, and the projects which are very popular worldwide. For instance, Fallout presently, also part of the Microsoft Game Studios, with the acquisition of Bethesda, and the games which are of the same sort, AAA blockbuster titles, the major games, franchises, etc. And the cost is affecting them as well. Well, I was not surprised to hear that Arcane were going to close down. They had produced some absolutely amazing games in the past, but the recent thing with Redfall was a kind of unforgivable type of experience in view of the budget which was allocated for marketing 18 months in advance, and the game really was one of the worst on release that I would have seen, together with Anthem, and trying to think, well, maybe Cyberpunk to a degree, but that was affecting primarily its console releases. So really that wasn't surprising. But then for Hi-Fi Rush developer, it's just extraordinary that you would have a situation where they deliver one of the most popular games on Xbox and Game Pass, being widely praised, and then guess what? There is the closure. One has to admit that some of the senior people in this company had departed of late, and they changed both ownership and leadership, and the operational policy of the company also had been significantly altered. So that also could have been a factor in the overall picture. I'm not sure. And the fact is, I can't answer the question that our friend's asking, because these are all the questions that everyone's asking in the industry, inclusive of those who are working for developers and publishers. But everyone's aware of the cost. People forget. I mean, we've had so many of our friends here in our community, Destiny-based community, who talked a lot about the lack of content, the dissatisfaction with Bungie, the problems with the servers, etc., etc. The fact is, Bungie are providing the maintenance for Destiny and are continuing to produce this massive content which we are enjoying day after day, and the game is extremely expensive both to make and to maintain, which means if the energy costs go up and up, don't forget electricity, gas, any other anything else that you're using will then be rising exponentially and affecting you across the board. And just think about the Bungie, with the number of computers they have, the number of staff, the type of equipment they use in order to make games, and what their build is likely to be. So my experience of the last couple of years have told me that some of the big chiefs has been very sensitive on the drop of the turnover or the sales, and even if you were looking at some minor percentages, The reason for that is you'd had the pandemic prior to that, which had been seriously affecting every single company or every single individual on the planet, inclusive of all businesses. And the shareholders, people who had invested huge amounts into such projects, became trigger happy and also very, very worried about the possible losses. The investment for such games is massive from certain individuals and entities. And therefore they put more pressure on the publishers and the developers in order to make either quick returns or to provide what's called guaranteed income. I mean, I have a difficulty with that term, and I've seen that in our country, that being displayed with estate agents, with investors, with banks. Well, if you've been in any form of investment business, if you've been trading, if you've gone to the markets, that's financial markets, you will know that doesn't exist. That's just nonsense. It's a fabrication and something which is completely elusive. Obviously, you may sway an audience or consumers, a group of people, to be buying a product, therefore you'll do very well. But that has its own limits. It's only for a certain number of days, months and years that you can do that. You cannot really manage to generate that sort of interest to be indefinite, particularly, I stress that, particularly considering how things are today. People have access to information 24/7. They can find for themselves what's new, what's good, what's bad, what other people are indicating on various online hubs and review sites. And it's completely separate section of the industry. I run also hubs dedicated to film and cinema, and you have so many people in there who are professional writers. There's people who spend like 20 years polishing of the skills with writing in words, semantics, and writing good articles and providing good reviews. They can't find any work anywhere, because everybody wants to hear what the chum who lives next door said about the film, because they'll say the chum's not biased. He's not writing a review which is based on your interest with your distributor or the company, the producer that made the film, or the crew that was in it. And you will have more objective views from ordinary punters than critics and professional writers. And that had been affecting that sector for quite some time now. Somebody who was an avid reader of in-the-know reviews and certain personalities from film criticism and various magazines, I find what is presently accessible on that front to be completely dreadful. I do not even want to read it. It doesn't have any form of clear-cut opinion on what is happening in a particular film, or as to why I would want to see a feature or support a particular director if they're new, for instance. It's just totally distributor, exhibitor and producer biased. So therefore there is a problem. On one hand, you have people who write and they're just supporting the companies and the entities that made the product. On the other hand, you have lots of writers who'd like to write, but they don't have access anymore to such publications. And obviously there are some people working for the mainstream publications, but it's just a very small number. And as I said, the way they write is not easily digested, or for myself, it's almost indigestible. And we come back to video game industry, and you will see that a similar sort of concern rises when you have huge pressure to sell immediately, quickly, to make a fantastic game, and you're not reaching certain targets. So really the discussion that was triggered off within the community was on the Game Pass, i.e. streaming services issue. Are those services helping the industry, or they're actually destroying smaller companies? It's a discussion that needs to be very carefully handled. There are many, many different reasons as to why such services are both necessary and incredibly important. But the way they're delivered, the way they're priced, the way they operate is something which will be changing as we carry on. So I've seen on the internet very many postings on Twitter and elsewhere indicating how dissatisfied certain members of our gaming community are with those services, that they believe that services should be scrapped, we should never have anything like this, everyone needs to pay for the game. So that is something that belongs to the old times, The times have changed, and we are in position to access information instantly, like you access your WhatsApp or SMS messages, and that is basically within everyone's mindset. That also includes payments when you go to shops. You go there and you pay by your phone, right? You got your card and your bank details on your phone, which is inseparable from you. There cannot be any fraud of any sort, and you are using that. You're not using any more credit cards or cash or anything. And once it takes off, people do not want to go back, and that's what's happened with the subscription services in video game industries. In my opinion, for myself personally, they have been absolutely phenomenal, incredibly good for myself. So I could try out lots of games that previously I wouldn't even notice or I couldn't afford to buy, be it either indie titles or the AAA blockbusters. I tried and played more games in the last 7-8 years compared to anything else in the past. And you could see sometimes when I talk here, I play like 4 or 5 different games a day, and I try them on these services, and then if I like them, I carry on playing them separately, independently. So I think the value of those services is phenomenal. You are getting, first of all, a tremendous global exposure for the titles, and then secondly, you're getting many more people who are engaged either with just a download or a stream at which they will decide whether they like to play the game. Still, it's that interest, still they'll remember certain elements of the game, like for instance the publisher or the developer. They'll if they like the game, they'll probably even buy it at a later stage. There's loads of benefits attached to this. And I've seen also some postings indicating neither Microsoft nor PlayStation made more than 1% increase in the turnover or like profits. I think people writing such things don't really understand how investments work. 1% or 2% increase on a sizable revenue, which could be like $500 million, is a sizable gain. You're not talking about 1% on tenner. So it's just one needs to put in perspective. Obviously, the shareholders may want to have 25% increase, which is both unattainable and unrealistic. But I think when you get into Twitter and some of the online discussions, a lot of people are not quite clear, or they're not in possession of the knowledge of what that actually means. The percentages, gains, and shareholders. And there's a lot of talk about shareholders, but I think many people do not understand how the whole investment system works. So coming back to my point, I'm not trying to be devil's advocate or defend these dreadful incidents of people losing their jobs and companies closing. It's absolutely awful. It's completely unacceptable in all sorts of ways, and companies should have certainly the means through which they will be redeeming whatever went wrong, unless there is some sort of very serious misdemeanor or fraud or anything else. And we have to look at both sides of the coin. It's very easy to jump on one bandwagon where you are complaining and criticizing literally everyone, and the other is you need to find the facts for yourself. And the industry is transparent, but when it comes to issues like losing jobs and closure of companies, well, it's a different ballgame altogether. You don't happen to have the facts and figures, that don't come your way. And what I've heard from Microsoft certainly during the last 24 hours was very reserved. We were not really hearing any proper reasons as to why this took place, and there was some discussion about ring fencing. One of our US friends, it's like offering you additional jobs in other companies, other parts of those Xbox gaming studios. So the idea was that not everybody will lose their jobs, but there are going to be some people, but the numbers are growing. So coming back to my earlier point, if the times have changed, like for instance with film reviewers, where they don't have any more the same readership, people will not be buying the Guardian or the Independent newspaper or Daily Telegraph to read some of the reviews. They will not. They'll just pull out the phone, have a look at Twitter, what others have said about the new release, and that's that. That is cast in stone. That is what they will follow. They believe the statements. Although they could be completely wrong, but they believe the statements. They say, this is just a private individual. He's got no vested interest. He will be objective. He will do as he will. And so the gaming industry have changed tremendously, as we previously always had to be in possession of a physical product. We've gone down the route of digital downloads, digital streams, and everything digital. So the physical product is no longer necessary. Although I know, like with films, I go to film collectors conventions. I go to places where you have film collectors that are still buying films on 35mm, 16mm, Super 8. And they will never ever sway from that. They're just, it's a hobby, it's their passion. They will always look for these kinds of rare flicks, and they'll find clips and outtakes and materials that were not seen for many decades, and they'll treasure that. I was attending a such event recently, and it was wonderful. We've seen, for instance, clips that previously had never been seen. They were of a documentary type, and they was discovered in an auction in somebody's attic. So you always have a very niche, very small interest for that. But on the wider scale, not many people will now be purchasing films on spools, on reels, in the same way as today people will not, in large quantities, purchase these physical products. You still get some. We have CX shops in Britain where they trade reasonably well, but they're selling games for a couple of quid. So a game that otherwise costs like £70, you get it for like £2 or £3. It doesn't seem to be having a major monetary value attached to it. So the thinking behind streaming services is to battle against certain trends, which would mean decreasing the market value of certain titles and making sure that the same titles will be accessible digitally, and therefore they could be sold on a higher price. A good example with Xbox. They have the Microsoft Store, and you can get all the Xbox games through it. So, for instance, if I go to CX and I purchase like just one of the older Modern Warfare, Call of Duty games, then it costs about £1.20 or so. But if you're buying them digitally, they will be a bit more expensive. That also applies to the old Xbox original games, I know, like Jade Empire or Knights of the Old Republic, or any other, Max Payne, for instance. You get them for 50 pence, £1 in such shops. If you're buying a digital download, it costs like £6 or £7. So really, the idea is not just to be making this accessible, but also it is already provided with the update that's giving it accessibility on any platform, the platform you have, for instance, Xbox Series X, S, and then also it's retaining that degree of monetary value. I think that's something that they're seriously considering. They don't want the games to be worth nothing and be just sold off, at a price where nobody even wants to purchase it. I give an example. The other day I went to a charity shop here, and they were selling DVDs. It's very good DVDs, almost brand new, never ever watched on any device. You can tell from the wrappers, factory wrappers, and the quality discs. 20 pence each, 5 for £1. And not that long ago, the same DVDs were costing, what, £15, £14, and people still buying them in large quantities. So, these companies have got to be in sync with the changes. The tech is developing to an extent and to a degree never seen in human history prior to this, and they're catching up. Inevitably, the changes also mean the changes of cost, and also the way certain offices and certain production companies are organized. And if, for instance, you have a new tech introduced that is reducing the need for, let's say, 3 or 4 people to work on a particular project, then obviously the corporation shareholders will jump at that, thinking, our outgoings are going to be significantly smaller, therefore the gains will be significantly higher. Doesn't always work like that. It's an illusion, but they resort to this. So coming back to the situation in Microsoft, I'm perturbed and rattled by the whole approach, particularly as far as the Hi-Rush developer is concerned, because I thought, and I have seen across the board, that Microsoft had supported the studio tremendously, and they provided a fantastic marketing budget. It talked about the game in very superior terms. But don't forget, if the whole leadership of the company departed due to whatever the issues were, then this is no longer the same company, And if, for instance, the new leadership was not pursuing the direction that was expected, well, that would be a good reason for a major change. And we still need to get more of a clear answer from either the industry or the corporate, but I don't know whether we are ever going to be able to get to the bottom of this. But then again, you get various other snippets of information with rumors and with other dissatisfied people from video game industry writing, particularly on Twitter, and therefore a certain image or certain notion is being built that does not necessarily have to reflect that specific situation. What I'm trying to say is we had many closures, and it may not be that all of them are being pursued for the same reason. I think that needs to be very clearly considered. Every company will have its own issues, and they will have to be looked at individually, in separation, despite the fact that 4 companies we talked about yesterday have been part of the Microsoft Game Studios, and they have been acquired within the last couple of years. So, Microsoft are having some issues with the sales of the console, and I discussed this live on air quite a few times. Difficulty there is you have the senior CEO, Phil Spencer, who's the boss, and he does lots of presentations worldwide indicating the creed. The task ahead is that everyone can play their games on their console everywhere around the world, anywhere, wherever you are, be it in Central Africa or North Pole, you name it. That is an ideal point of view. It's like an ideal for what they want to achieve. That is not the current reality. I talked a lot here on my streams previously on Twitch as well, that when I travel, particularly when I go to the continent, their services are not accessible in every country. And this is a huge obstacle. I mean, it's a fantastic console. It provides you with everything you need, both for streaming, for playing the games, for acquisition of new titles, let alone the integration of television services and everything else. But if it doesn't work, if you can't generate your rewards points, if you can't be playing certain games, you can't access cloud, you can't access the live services, then nobody on earth is going to be investing that money in your console, because simply it doesn't work. You need to enable the services in all countries for people to embrace the device which you're selling. I mean, just think, if you had a mobile phone, you went from one country to another, it will not work there. Well, what's the point of having a phone? You want a phone that works everywhere. So that is the big challenge, the big difference, and it is affecting the sales. And I talked about it a lot, but I've never heard, even once, in any of the official Xbox presentations, that the issue that we raised as streamers, as dedicated Xbox ambassadors and the lovers of the console have raised, we have never seen anybody talking about that. It just, being water dogs back. We talk about it, I report it to the company, I write something somewhere about it, but the officials don't really present that as a real problem. And that is a real problem. That is affecting sales, and therefore the console is not selling. In addition to that, the console is quite expensive, and if it doesn't work everywhere, then what's the point? If you were Digital Foundry, and if you were to be digesting some of the wonderful words of wisdom which their team is frequently presenting to everyone, you would have realized that some of the top guys, like they're based in Germany, two of them, they can't access ultra-fast fiber due to where they are. And if they can't access ultra-fast fiber, cloud services on PC and on Xbox for them do not work. They're unplayable. They constantly lag, they constantly crash. The reason for that is the new tech is dependent on the latest state of the internet speeds, and if you can't get the very best or the fastest, then your setup will not work. And I was shocked, I have to say. I mean, in Germany they have really very good internet compared to what we have in Britain. But obviously, if you are living in some remote areas, you're really far away from the urban city environments, you may not be able to get ultra-fast fiber, and therefore you're affected. So you're not going to be purchasing either the subscription to Game Pass or the equipment, because it isn't going to work. Just saying, it's these factors that have to be very carefully considered by the company if they want to be satisfying shareholders. Otherwise it is just like providing you with an illusion that is as elusive as what we find in RPG games. It's just never going to come into our everyday life. Therefore we play these games, right? That's the bottom line, is we want to enjoy that fantasy which detaches us from everyday ills. But coming back to that, these are all serious issues. I mean, they're affecting their degree of investment, they're affecting the way they operate, and I'm sure many of those are linked to the overall cost of living, the fact that the energy bills had gone to the roof. And I remember listening to something which was on the podcast, wasn't like a mainstream podcast coming from Bungie. They said that they really are worried that because of the costs, they will not be able to operate. And usually what people say, well, you sold that many games, how can it be that you don't have the money? Well, the fact you sold the game doesn't mean you got the money. The money is invested. The money goes into separate areas where the investment is required. And that includes the payment of wages, taxes, you name it. I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. So, unless somebody really scratches the head and starts thinking how the investments work, then we're not going to be getting the correct information. That is not to say that the corporations of Microsoft's size should be just delivering these types of hatch jobs overnight where so many people will be deeply affected. They need to have a program to which people will be either ring-fenced in terms of their jobs, or indeed we as the consumers and supporters of the company need to know what the real issue at stake is. I don't think many people question, the situation with Arcane, Austin, and Redfall. They had very successful games in the past, but if you raise the bar for yourself and you have a title that will take a huge amount of money in order to be promoted around the world as one of the main titles that your platform is offering, and then it backfires in such fashion, it is sort of unforgivable for the investors. I understand that, but they should have been given a second chance. They should have been given a chance to repair the game, to create new content, to bring in maybe some additional gameplay characters, DLCs. You've seen, for instance, with an independent studio like CD Projekt Red, they had a huge, disastrous launch of Cyberpunk, but over the period of a couple of years, they had really turned it into a masterpiece, i.e. the way they wanted the game to be from the beginning. Again, they suffered from the pressure that was coming from shareholders, and they also were, feeling the pinch when it came to things not working out and their shares dropping. But one way or the other, there has got to be a voice of reason in all of this. It can't be all driven by speed and ambition and then no delivery. So this is some of my reflections and thoughts. I'm staggered by the quantity of studios that they're closing down, and everyone in the video game community is shocked and horrified, and we've had many different discussions already, but many are still to follow. Don't forget, people are still digesting the news, and have many podcasts. I certainly recommend the Unlocked podcast for you to listen to. They'll talk about that within the next couple of days, and then you have other independent podcasts coming from Eurogamer, from Games Radar, from other hubs. You also will have probably some discussion on this through Xbox podcast and various things that Microsoft provide. So definitely make sure you pay attention to what comes out and get engaged. But I'll tell you a bit more in response to what's happened, and I want to tell you a bit more through the mainstream press. I mean, my thinking certainly about this is Microsoft are suffering on the Xbox games front a loss. They're not, the projected figures are not being, they're not materializing, and that is causing a huge problem for the planning ahead. And they've gone down the route of looking at the procedure through which they prioritize the future projects, and they simply shelved and closed down what they felt was a potential or actual liability. These are people. You've seen, for instance, the other executive works for Arcane, not for the one that got closed down. He said, well, don't really treat us like we were sort of wooden blocks or vegetables or something. Consider us as people who work in creative industries. Things can backfire. To provide us with some sort of support or, a platform for further redemption if things go wrong, because things could go seriously wrong for many different reasons, be it technical or something to do with the content or price. It could be sometimes that your release clashes with another big release, and doesn't have to be within video gaming. It could be some major sporting event, could be anything else happening in the world, such as the world of today. And he asked, he said, well, give us some support, make sure that we are not being discarded like rubbish, basically, just dumped overnight, being told on Friday, clear desk and you worked there for 10 years, and it's just completely unacceptable. So I'll give you a bit of a reaction that we've seen and heard from some hubs. I had an article from Verge indicating that the redundancies were to indeed be set in motion. And then you had Dinga Bakaba, the person I just mentioned, who said, I actually quote exactly his words, "Don't throw us into gold fever gambits. Don't use us as strawmen for your miscalculations. Blind spots don't make our work environments blind spots, and do not make our work environments Darwinist jungles." So it was really quite a strong fierce response to what had happened. He was supporting his colleagues and perhaps friends who worked at Arkane Austin, and he was basically saying this at any executive would be reading his words. He published that on Twitter, or I should say on X as it's called today, and I guess it was a kind of a public display of criticism, but also maybe coming from Microsoft employees themselves, who are also worried about what next, and just reflecting on some of the thoughts that our friends from The Verge were presenting us with. And I guess you also heard that Arkane Austin were working on this major DLC that should have gone out and subsidized the problems as far as Redfall was concerned, and it was to be both with a new character, new content, and offline play, and a few other things added. But they were working on that, and then suddenly they've heard everything is going to be shut down. And I think, coming back to that, considering the lack of success with that release, some problems or some redundancies or changes or drastic changes were expected, but maybe not the actual shutdown of the services and the closure of the studio. I mean, they made Prey, they made Deathloop, a very successful game, but I've got to say, reworking Deathloop in a vampire-based environment was a fluke from the beginning, and I really thought it isn't going to work, and unfortunately it didn't work. But Deathloop was a good game, everyone enjoyed it, maybe did not receive acclaim and exposure as it should have done, but reworking that within that environment with vampires didn't seem to me something particularly good or original, considering there are many games of that sort that could have done it better. Anyway, that's just my take on this, and the many reasons as to why the whole thing didn't work, and as to why the company had not delivered. And I guess it's a particularly painful type of failure. It was coming out after Xbox and Microsoft purchased Bethesda, and they wanted that to be just one in line of many of those successes, and it didn't materialize, sadly, and therefore now the studio's closed. So I think the biggest surprise for everyone was about Tango Gameworks, and that's the studio behind Hi-Fi Rush, and everyone in the industry, and that included many writers for IGN and Games Radar, Eurogamer, people from the company itself, from Microsoft. They all said that this was one of the very best games, and also the game was making its way to PS5. And so, it just really weird. And Aaron Greenberg, who is the head of Xbox game marketing, he said Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. However, what they do not quote in The Verge is he said it didn't really sell. It didn't sell to the degree which was expected. So that's something which is very, very important. And they just extracted that from the quote. I listened to him when he talked about that live on the podcast, and also it was written elsewhere, I think on Twitter at the time. And both Phil and Aaron went to Tango Gameworks and played the games with the guys, and then posing for the group photos, and I also watched that, I remember, a little while back. And then now they've gone. What they're not writing about is that the whole group of people who run this company departed from the company due to some form of disagreement with the operation policy or anything else. And they've not written this in here, so you really need to get your facts straight. In fact, I did have a look at the comments that some of the online hubs were receiving, and there were people indicating there's been like selective reporting. It's not presenting the full picture. I think it's critical. It's absolutely most important that you're getting the full picture of everything that goes on in the industry, specifically if it is related to such major industry earthquakes. Being selective is not a good idea. So Arkane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and Alpha Dog Games are gone. And then you heard that the fourth studio is not being shut down, but it's being migrated into the production of Elder Scrolls Online, and they will become part of ZeniMax Online Studios. So that was altogether at the tail of another redundancy selection that was happening a few months back, and they had laid off 1,900 of Activision, Blizzard, and Xbox employees. And just months after, Sony also closed some of their own game studios, and they also laid off around 900 employees. So, yeah, very large numbers of people. But I've got to say, when you have acquisitions of companies, they will then come under very different selection of rules and operational policies, and that sometimes can be then reflected on who can continue to work for the company. Give an example: if you had in a company like Bethesda a huge marketing department, the people who worked on promotion of the game, once they come to Microsoft, they're redundant. They're no longer necessary. Microsoft will have their own massive big departments doing exactly the same. They may well be brought in, but there will be then cuts for that reason alone. Coming from your own independent status to $1 trillion company is changing the way you'll be operating, and that's sadly just a fact. They said that the depressing list of layoffs at game studios, I'm telling you what The Verge were reporting, so some ideas are mine, some are from them, but I'm just reflecting on some of their thoughts. And they said there was the depressing list of layoffs at game studios continues to grow on a weekly basis, with GTA 5, that's Grand Theft Auto, and Bioshock publisher Take-Two also deciding to make hundreds of employees redundant last month, and also doing some cutting on the projects. And I kept saying this many times here live on air: support small indie developers. Download the games of these indie developers which are accessing through Game Pass. Stream them, download them, make sure you display some affection and love towards them. Don't just play Call of Duty and Apex. Go to the small guys, support the effort. We can monitor the number of downloads and the streams instantly from second to second. And I'm telling you, any company that becomes involved with Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo or any other, if they are not getting that degree of attention, they will be dropped. It's just the way the basic principles are, and that's just the way the investment industry works. Unlike in some other areas of the industry, games require huge investment prior to their release. So a lot of that investment is just, given to them in good faith and with the belief that the actual title will, make good, they'll be successful. That is the key factor. If you are investing small amounts, you still will be anxious to get them back as soon as possible. If you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars, it's a different story altogether. And I'm afraid in that business, in that industry, there's very little tolerance for very large losses. And that's the way it's been within that economic model. Whether people like it or not, it's just the way it's been. I'm not saying that I'm supporting it or that I'm completely against it, but that's the fact. The tangibility of certain investments will always be scrutinized by those people who are investing. They will want to see the gains. I mean, from my liking, what's happened and what I find really difficult, the unrealistic expectations on returns and profit making had been created with some of the investors. And as we globalize industries, that had become more of an issue, because globalized industries, the big global players, when they join forces, they have a lot more capital, a lot more muscle than the national, the local, the small guys, and they can sway markets. That's the fact. And therefore they will have much greater concerns about greater losses, because the investment is phenomenally great as well. So all of that needs to be seen within a kind of bigger, greater picture of how the industries actually function today. So it's not just industry specific. It's just not exclusive to do with video gaming. It's to do with the way the other related industries also function, the way they're connected to these procedures, and also how that is affecting the pricing, the overall cost in order to maintain certain projects, and how this works overall in terms of the future interest and the overall financial stroke HR health of any given company. So many things to consider. So inside Xbox, now there is a lot of uncertainty about what the future will hold, and there is a big picture there's a big question about the existence of Game Pass, and as to why Xbox that previously kept saying that this is something Xbox console specific, now is swinging towards the PC access. But this has been changed of direction, which is quite drastic. And is there any future at all for the console itself? These are the questions, and also for the economic model of Game Pass. And well, in here, in The Verge, they're also questioning the exclusivity of certain games, but I've got to say that's again a bit of a bit of kind of lukewarm news. We've heard from Phil Spencer that they will be sharing certain titles with Sony and vice versa, because they believe that exclusivity model belongs to the past. They will not carry on with this. They do not see exclusivity in an age where everything is more or less cross-platform based to be a model that can survive and retain certain kinds of returns and gains in longer term. So it is just not really something I would agree with. And they are also questioning whether the long-rumored Gears of War collection series is ever going to be confirmed or come our way. I'm quite certain it will, a bit like what we had with some other games. And they also expect to see Xbox games to come to PS5 and Switch. Well, yes, they will come to PS5 Switch, because Phil Spencer had said so. He said that they will be sharing games, and that will be reciprocal. They'll get some games from them too. And if you're saying that the number of subscribers on Game Pass are not risen exponentially, it's been only like 1 or 2% in the last 12 months, that doesn't mean that the service is not operating or working. Doesn't mean that the service is not successful, because sometimes, like in a supermarket, you'll make some losses on some products and make massive gains on others, and that's the basic principle of investment industry, And going back to this, there have also lots of debates whether to launch Call of Duty series on Game Pass, and it's not clear as yet when, if, and what will happen with the title. And this has been going for quite some time, and I guess the Xbox would want that straight away, but Activision and Blizzard may not be that keen, and they will have their own targets in terms of sales and everything else. But on the other hand, if you go back to the experiment of Warzone, this was phenomenally successful. I mean, a lot of people said, well, hang on a minute, for the first time ever, a Call of Duty game multiplayer offered free of charge, nobody needs to pay anything. Within the first 12 months of the game being launched, they made $2 billion on the sales of cosmetics alone. So you can see how offering that game under, at that time, a brand new economic model turned out to be extremely successful. The same thing applied to Apex. So, these companies had been quite alert to the changes, and they had applied the new model to their games and changed direction, and therefore they walked away with very sizable gains, And a problem, I guess, for a company like Activision is that they will be then investing some of that money in other projects. So they won't be just staying with Call of Duty franchise, they'll still go into other titles. And that is where the danger lies. It's a bit like Hollywood studios. You invest in smaller titles which cost quite a bit, but actually do not bring any money, and therefore money is blown. Sad fact of life. The question is, how can you remedy that? Well, you can't remedy against loss, I guess the idea behind the overall tendency for which the big studios and corporations want to manipulate huge numbers of people worldwide to be purchasing just this artist, watch just this film, is to ensure the returns. They're not really, I don't see them as being geared for total global domination or anything of that sort. But if you're investing in Dua Lipa, if you're investing in, Batman Returns, if you're investing in the new Dune film, you want those returns to come back, because your project was extremely expensive. You do not want to leave it to chance, even if an audience is going to dislike it, you see. And even then, you just need to force feed them everywhere the information, people buy into it, and they'll go and see it and they'll pay the money. That's the basic notion. And we've heard from Mr. Booty. I was reading his response yesterday, and not being very personal. It's just a general kind of statement, trying to come across as friendly and upbeat, but I don't think many people really took any of that on board in such fashion. And he also noted that they want to be investing in those titles which are kind of best positioned for success. Well, Fallout's been around for how many years now? 17. It's got almost 20 years. I mean, since the third installment of the franchise, but otherwise the computer games were there since mid-90s, and with the television series they raised publicity and the profile of the title to so many different people worldwide who perhaps are not interested, and therefore they have some fantastic sales. And it's a success built on 25 to 30 years of work. I think one shouldn't really consider it's just a series. It isn't a series, it's just everything together. It's a result of the investment and the works put into the whole project from the beginning that evolved over that period, eventually ended up with these kinds of games. And so really, the question is, did Hi-Fi Rush really did not meet that bar of success? I remember that Greenberg said it did not sell as expected. And it was offered day one on Game Pass, and maybe people did not buy the game afterwards, I don't know, it's a possibility. I bought quite a lot of games that are accessible on Game Pass, and generally the way it works for me is, if the game is available through the streaming platform, I'll wait for the game to be taken down, and then they'll offer it on a substantial discount through the Microsoft Store, and you get it on a fraction of the price. And it really works. I mean, I bought quite a few games like that, so that's my principle. But then again, I've got to say that for the titles that are just released, the investors will be keen on seeing what the return is going to be on that day, or within the first couple of weeks, first weekend, depending on what project you're looking at, and therefore thinking of those returns a few months or few years down the line is simply a non-starter for them. They want the returns back much earlier. So I'm not really a very good customer for them, let's face the facts. But I'm a customer who's just building a huge library of games that always acquired on the very best price. I don't want to jump on the game straight when it comes out. It's not necessary. I'll wait. I'm patient. I don't have the revenue to fork out £70 for every new title that is being launched almost every single week. It's not financially feasible, not just in the present day and age. It's been like this ever, and it's easy for people who get paid to review, get codes from the publishers. I don't get that, and therefore I'm being left to my own devices. So I subscribe to these streaming platforms and then pay every month, which is what I do, and enjoy the games to the fullest extent, or I don't play them at all, So obviously we know what option I'm choosing, and therefore I'm very grateful to Sony and Xbox for providing us with these streaming platforms, and I hope they will retain their presence and continue developing as long as I'm around, because after I'm gone, then it won't really concern me personally, but I simply think that the platforms need to be evolving. They need to be offering always something new, something interesting. And if there is one thing that they still need to work on, is the degree of social networking and overall interactivity, which is specifically based to that platform, right? It's not just based on a title, but it's based on the platform, and you will want then that platform to be like a social network, and then that would be really very interactive and truly amazing. So that's not happened yet, but the platform's been around for. These platforms have not been around for too long, and I've certainly seen a massive evolution ever since I began using them, which is already almost a decade ago now, and I'm very grateful. That's all I can say. So we hear that from The Verge again, that Xbox have a number of games now geared for more or less immediate launch, and one of them, in fact, I watched today, the Developer Direct that was broadcast a few months ago, which I missed due to my father's illness, and I watched a section on on Hellblade, Senua Saga, Hellblade 2, and it's amazing. Just to see Ninja Theory Studios in Cambridge, and the way they operate and the way they make games, and fascinating. But when you watch it, you realize that studio is unbelievably expensive to maintain, the tech they have there, the location and everything else. So the game has got to be a huge success for the returns to come back and for them to obviously acquire further investments. So it's a huge risk, it's huge pressure. I mean, I'm absolutely no doubt that they will deliver with the new game, but they've taken a somewhat different turn. It's more narrative driven than the first one, and it's shorter than the first one from what I understood. So we need to see whether our communities will jump and embrace the title. I certainly hope so, and I think from my point of view that game is not important just in terms of its actual content and gameplay and maybe fan base, but for me personally it's important as it presents mental illness in its real true format. That is what it looks like when you're mentally ill, and I've not seen anything anywhere, and believe me, I've watched many films and television series, I've read many books, which was as close to the bone as Hellblade. And that is most commendable. That is just a truly fantastic achievement, and I applaud the team for doing this. And they worked with quite a large medical team as advisors, and I just watched today the clips and some gameplay from the new game that will indeed be released on 21st, I think, of this month, and it's incredibly realistic, and like their sound engineering director or the sound director indicated, with headphones and with the new technologies you can really kind of pinpoint exactly every single detail that is desired to be seen and heard through the way she is. And he said, well, all of us are actually Senua because we are living through her head, and it is so exciting and so rewarding, yet it is also a bit tormenting, which is exactly what it is, because you're dealing with a very, very difficult not just subject, but like an internal human experience of what it's like to be hearing voices. So that is so well captured in the game, and as I said, they're really considering whether they should also release that game on PlayStation 5, and sooner or later I think all those games will be cross-platform. So I don't really see that as a major problem. It's just a change of direction, and people used to say, well, why would you want to buy Xbox if you have PlayStation? Well, why not? It's different consoles that deliver different types of things, and they will be competing. That's the bottom line. And I think, considering how things are today, they may be competing for a different reason and on a completely different level. So it won't be any more through the exclusives, and you buy me and do not buy him. Even Phil Spencer in one of the recent interviews said that's just something that belongs to the past. It's just complete nonsense, because you may want to have one and the other, and you want to share. You may want to have some games on one console, play some of the games on the other, and cross-platform, cross-save and cloud. These are the key developments. These are the milestone achievements of the industry, and I think everyone needs to be fully aware of how important these achievements really are for the industry overall, as well as for the future of what is to happen and how the games are being made or will be made in days and years to come. So really, a lot of fear is present there at Microsoft Studios, and people are worried whether they're going to be the one who will get that P45 notice, as we call it in Britain, or redundancy, or clear desk, as they say it in the US. And there also are some rumors that within the Xbox Game Studios there are going to be some cuts and redundancies, but these are speculations. And considering the stats in here, they said that Xbox hardware revenue was down by 31%, and I've got to say, if you're not accessible in everywhere in the world, then you are going to be suffering. And with the number of subscribers to Xbox Game Pass, if you have a campaign lasting 5 years, you will reach a pinnacle. You'll have everybody who wants to be subscribing who will be on your list, and maybe new people do not want to subscribe. You have to wait for another generation of gamers to grow up, then they'll subscribe or decide to go somewhere else. It's not possible to be force-feeding the model to maybe people who are not interested in it, or trying to really exceed the figures which at the end of the day may be unrealistic. But at the end of the day, if you're complaining that you're not growing the number of subscribers, well, just consider the fact they're not subscribing because they can't access your services. Do I want to be paying British Telecom for fiber optic if I can't have it in my own area? It's illegal. It's something that one can't do. You can't be paying them if they're not providing you the service. And Microsoft are complaining that they're having a drop in sales when in fact they're not providing the services to the countries which in fact could be giving them millions of new customers. I know it baffles me. I know that services are very expensive, such as cloud and Xbox Live, but you can't expect to be selling Xbox consoles in a country that doesn't have access to these services, because that console is completely obsolete. You can't do anything with it. Particularly if even you buy an Xbox Series S that doesn't have physical drives, you can't even play the the games of physical product, physical format. So it's crazy. Right, so that's probably all I wanted to say about the situation with Microsoft and redundancies, and also what I said in response to some of the comments. I'll just give you some ideas on what people said, just a few comments, just to give you I guess a picture of how diverse the opinions are and how much of that dissatisfaction and anger we are getting from so many participants. So one person saying Hi-Fi Rush wasn't small and it wasn't cheap. It turned into a full AAA product with all the time and money one could actually expect to spend on such major title. And he says, like him or not, Booty's rumored comments are about literally making smaller, cheaper games. And Hi-Fi Rush was not that. And check the record. So he's indicating that Hi-Fi Rush was actually quite an expensive game, but I've got no means of checking, so wouldn't want to comment on that. And the other person says, at this point there are only 3 possibilities. Everyone at Xbox has a different strategy and no unified plan. That's definitely complete fluke. That's not relevant. It's not happening. The CEO and CFO are taking control and reversing the Xbox team vision. Maybe there's a discrepancy between the desires of the management team and the investors. And, there'd be no management if the investors do not provide the funds. How are you going to be able to work and get paid if they don't want to give you the money, or if they want to close your company? It's the guys at Arkane Austin. They can't work anymore. They can't go back to the workplace because the money's not there. They're not a state-run company. People need to understand that. And then we have another person here saying, well, this article is such a hack job. Hi-Fi Rush was never mentioned in this magazine, and that title is designed to enrage the majority who just read headlines and then would take it to Twitter. Heaven forbid a news website take a deeper dive into the situation instead of just pushing misleading headlines. I don't really agree with this sort of aggressive, pushy approach to comments, but I've got to say, he does have, underneath of that rage, a point. And I spotted in the article 2 or 3 quotes which were not complete. They were literally extracted from the overall context, and then you have a very different opinion on what somebody had said. There have been remarks made at the time where the comments were being given to the world, which indicated that the company was not satisfied with the sales, or they were not satisfied with the cost. Like for instance, the game was extremely expensive to make. Well, it looks like a cheap game, but actually it's very expensive to make. That needs to be stated. And then somebody else says, wish that Microsoft hadn't bought Bethesda, and then we would not have this sort of issue. It's only because they were complaining that Starfield was originally going to be on PlayStation, first like Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, which is kind of odd since Xbox got both of these games anyway. No, that's not really true. It just seems to me that people are not thinking clearly or not really collecting the facts. And, it says there are a lot of Xbox avatars that have been dying to have some small games to be in. I know that this isn't ideal for Tango, but it would have been an option for the developer still to be around. Alright, so that's all kinds of thoughts and ideas that we've seen and heard. And we are gutted to experience such massive losses of creative power within those companies. I'm really, really devastated to learn about all this, and definitely not supporting that sort of hatchet job. But at the end of the day, we need to know more in order to really build a clear view on whether these kinds of cuts were necessary, and also to get a picture of what is to follow. If they start closing down so many different studios which belong to their umbrella group, then what is there to follow? You know, what will happen next? And I'm still unclear about this overall. So let me see what else we've got. Mike Ibarra, he is the former Blizzard president. He said that Xbox, Phil Spencer, will be hurting as much as anybody else following the closure of your first-party studios. So let me see what he meant by that. And he's defending his former colleague, that said, and let me see. He said, I see lots of shots at Phil over today's Xbox announcements. I get it, understand, he's the boss. But knowing him as a human, I know this will hurt him as much as anyone else. I can't speak for all of the leadership there, but I do know him, and I do know what he's likely to be going through. And I'm not trying to defend the decisions. I think we all get ourselves into situations that are tough and unexpected. And he said, certainly I have in the past. It's part of the job, as is the accountability for the outcomes. But he's a good human, and he cares deeply for the creative process and developers. And that's my first-hand experience in working closely with him for 8 years and knowing him for 24. Well, you know, being in that position is extremely difficult, and you need to be taking decisions which are based not on your own personal view, but using facts and figures and the overall picture of what is going on within a company. And that is sometimes extremely unpleasant, particularly for people who are very friendly and charming and hold that sort of executive role. And we've heard that Redfall Studio was reportedly working on an offline mode for May release, and this was more or less imminent, right? So the release should have been in the course of this month, but then they learned about the closure, and then that was all gone. And there are thoughts that making good profitable games will no longer keep you safe, and many people from the industry felt that. PC Gamer reports, well, I think it's taking too far. It's not really always like this. And we have some rumors indicating that Perfect Dark Reboot, you remember the game, a 360 game, a very popular one, is not going as smoothly as expected at Xbox. So let me see what they indicate about the development of that game. Again, they said, we are continuing with the doom and gloom coming from pure Xbox to us. We've come across a bunch of rumors related to the upcoming Perfect Dark Reboot, and it's again presenting us with a negative picture. So there's somebody who says, I've been hearing more and more, been hearing for years that Perfect Dark is in a rough state. Sounds like it's already or always in a rough state, and it doesn't sound like it's really come together in any way since then, since it was first announced, unlike Crystal Dynamics coming on board to help with that. And Crystal Dynamics being the company helping out with this. And then, well, these are just rumors. We can't really buy into this. Maybe, maybe not. We need to hear directly from the studio. And again, I think everyone within the last 48 hours has been just so furious with Microsoft. So now we keep getting all the bad news. You know, all the games are not doing well. There's a problem with the development. Now we're getting more news about how, for instance, Game Pass is not attracting new customers. And, you know, I just told you as to why I think that is. So Game Pass appear to have stalled in the US. Kirana's Matt Priscatella, MPD Group, it's a research group. He says non-mobile video game subscriptions have grown 1% in the US compared to a year ago, and for the year prior, the growth was just 2%. Well, he didn't say what figures we were talking about, because 2% on $500 million could be a sizable revenue, you know? 2% on £10 is not a lot, and I think that is just a bit unfair, taking it really outside of that equation. Let's see what other news we have which are not Xbox related, but there's so many coming in about Xbox. I'm just looking here. It's Xbox Perfect Dark reboot not working. But there's something I've heard yesterday, and that really made me very rattled. EA, Electronic Arts, which is a hated publisher, I've got to say that many people in my game community do not want to buy anything coming from EA for various reasons. Usually the problems with money being paid back or the games not work or anything else. I've not had any of these experiences. I've been very happy with EA. I'm just reflecting on what many community members had said here, live on air, really, as they're doing, playing many different games with me. And they basically considered the idea similar to Amazon and YouTube. And that is to be streaming adverts as you are playing games. So that's really unacceptable. And they say, excuse me, they said, we are considering in-game advertising, but we'll be taking a rather thoughtful approach. And they sold in-game ads for its sports games and Battlefield 2142 in the past. So in his latest briefing, their CEO, Andrew Wilson, said it's still early on that front, but we are very thoughtful about it. And so we'll be very careful with the way these kinds of changes might be implemented as we think about the many, many billions of hours spent playing, creating, watching and connecting, and where much of that engagement happens to be on the bounds of a traditional game experience. Our expectation is that advertising has an opportunity to be a meaningful driver of growth for us. I don't buy into that. Adverts and online advertising is purely an attempt to monetize as much as possible, and if you're talking about anything meaningful and thoughtful, well, maybe sometimes you see a product that you're interested in, but the bottom line is it's all about generating the revenue, because more players you get, the greater the revenue. We'll be very thoughtful as we move into that area, and we have teams internally in the company right now looking at what we do and how we do these kinds of very thoughtful implementations inside of our game experiences. And put in perspective on figures, they are doing reasonably well. They just reported a full year profit, that's last 12 months, of 1.273 billion on 7.5 billion in revenue. So like the other studios, they made 600 people unemployed, and they cancelled several games which they considered to be perhaps unlikely to come out as success. And that is also inclusive of a Star Wars game, FPS. And SCS Software announced that also it sold ad space inside American Truck Simulator to the trucking company Schneider National. Square Enix also did have a browser-based gaming service that was allowing users to play games for free with ad breaks. So, you know, these things have been considered in the past, but generally I think the opinion was it wasn't going to work. They could really lose many more customers, and therefore the whole idea would seriously backfire. The news I'm excited about is that EA is reportedly ready to finally release Dragon Age Dreadwolf, and that would be for this financial year. So that is according to Eurogamer. And I'm very, very excited about Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Huge fan of the series, loved it. I think even I preferred it at the time to Elder Scrolls. This is going back maybe 15 years or so when the game was released, and really totally enjoyed and loved the first one. The second one, for me, I still have to maybe replay it to get the full swing of it. It's significantly different. And then the third one was a masterpiece. So really, we can't just wait. You know, we're so impatient, we just simply can't wait for the new title to come our way. And we've heard that they are considering 2 unannounced games slated for release by March 2025, and that is in the EA's latest financial report. And the 2 new releases, they said here, Tales of Kenzera Esports F1 24, EA Sports and NHL 25, sports titles generally, right? and they will be revealing the full details of Dreadwolf, that's Dragon Age, at some point in the summer. So we need to see what they say. And it's almost 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition came out, so that's really a long while back. And yeah, well, these are speculations. We don't have the dates, but I think we're expecting some form of statement indicating when the game is going to come out. And yet again, more bad news about streaming services. Now they're talking about Xbox, they're talking about PlayStation as well, and I don't want to pay attention to this. I think it is blowing it out of proportion. They've not had many enough subscribers, but remember, Netflix also had the drop a little while back and changed things somewhat, and then the figures improved, new subscribers came in, and the biggest thing was introducing services which offered on low prices, and as soon as you had that, many more new people came in, and you know, it's just the way things are, really, friends. People do not have a lot of disposable income. They need money for food, for electricity, for water, for regular meals, for buses and trains, and therefore, if you reduce your subscription prices, they perhaps will consider some of the things you have got to offer. On Tuesday, we had the reset of Destiny, and the reset brought us 3 new Crucible maps, and these are the new territory, 3 versus 3, and then you compete against your fellow Guardians on Europa, Nyamuna, and a conquered pyramid ship. So you need to go to Lord Shaxx, collect the quest and collect the bounties, and then crack on. Then they said, well, again, coming back from EA, if you remember, we were talking about unsuccessful launches, and one of the very bad launches, really, the game was unplayable. I remember playing it on Game Pass, it was absolutely awful, was Electronic Arts Battlefield 2042, and I think the game had been massively improved. I've not played it since. I really hated it. It was just, hits didn't register, it was lag, there was rubber banding, game crashing, you know, it was just absolutely awful, and I can't understand for the life of me, for the publisher that size to be giving the green light to a game which is not ready, and then having to suffer from all of that collateral. It just baffles me. I mean, somebody really should have been involved with the process of checking the game and finding out whether the servers are going to be working, and I don't know what. All of that's been very much a concern, and EA has hosted an earnings call for its Q4 of 2024, and they really are doing quite well, right? But on the other hand, they said they were just below where the publisher thought they would be. So they reported 1.66 billion revenue, and that was less than the expectation projected figure of 1.8 billion. And if you're familiar with the way the financial markets work, they always trade the rumor and sell the fact. So for instance, if you were buying on the rumor 1.8 million, you'd be investing, and therefore the company would be worth more. And if you realize that the actual figure was 166 billion, 1.66, then you begin selling the shares. So, you know, that's the reason as to why these kinds of intense anxieties start creeping up. So you need to understand how the system of investment and financial markets really work to know what the liabilities may be. Because you'd say, well, hang on a minute, it's ridiculous. I mean, you've got profits there of 1.8 billion and 1.6 billion, and they say, well, yeah, but that's not as good as projected. And you ask yourself, well, where did you get the projections from? It's a speculation. Therefore, it's called a speculative market. And sometimes the speculations could be completely wrong. You know, it's just. But some people make money, and other people lose it. And I should say, the ratio is not always the same. Without getting into details. So let's see. We have Developer DICE said that the Battlefield 2024's current season will be its last, and while that game is in much better state than when launched, the obvious question is, what are you going to be doing next? Excuse me. I still don't have this button here which can mute the mic, and really bothers me because I always had such devices before, but on this mic that's not possible. And no, what can I tell you? Weird. Bear with me a second. I guess the way to do it is to just switch everything off on the main panel for OBS, and then, but it's not instant. And they are going to be building a Battlefield universe across connected multiplayer and single player experiences. So that is the next thing, and they've not given any dates, so that probably will be they said that Battlefield titles qualify as live service, and they're not really quite the same like Destiny, but contemporary FPS market is built on the trappings of battle passes and seasonal content, making a huge amount of money, needs to be said. In 2021, EA handed leadership of the Battlefield series to Respawn founder Vince Zampella, who is still in charge, and the publisher is clearly committing an enormous amount of resources to whatever is next. Wow, it's a huge franchise. The last title didn't perform, but they will have plenty to come our way, I can assure you. And then we have another news related to Sony this time, and that's related to Sony's streaming services. As I talk so much about Microsoft, let's see what they indicated here about PlayStation Plus. And they said that a little while back there was a huge amount of pressure coming from Push Square for Sony to be copying Xbox Game Pass model, and also of the day one first party releases, which is what the previous CEO said they would never ever do. And as the time goes by, it's beginning to look like the Japanese giant basically avoided that. They had been improving the number of titles to the streaming services, but they're not releasing their big AAA titles on day one to the streaming engine. And they argued that doing this, offering them on day one, is unsustainable. And then now there's a speculation that they were right, because Tango Gameworks and Ark in Austin had closed, and that's the indication that those games should have not been released on Game Pass. That's nonsense. I mean, if you release Redfall independently, it still would bomb because it didn't function. The game was technically absolutely unsound. It just million different problems technically. It just didn't deliver. Doesn't matter whether it's launched on Game Pass or anywhere else. It just, the game's not operational. It doesn't function. It's as simple as that. And so again, they go back to Piscella and the figures, and they're saying how, for instance, the industry is growing by 1% versus 2%, and the opinion, which is now being pushed, that I completely disagree with, is that these subscriptions like PS Plus and Game Pass are not the game-changing business models that they were built to be. That's nonsense. They absolutely are. They are game-changed models because you are able to access so many different titles on a subscription price, and you enjoy them in full, and it's just no way back. There's absolutely no way to which these services will be completely discontinued. They may be presented in different format, there may not be that many titles, they may withdraw some of the big titles, but they will carry on. They're the biggest marketing tool that these companies have today. It's not many people will buy bundles of PlayStation with one game, one of the latest AAA releases, but they will buy a console and they will subscribe to PlayStation Plus because they can access all the games. It's a basic logic. I don't know what these people... I mean, you really wonder what types of news feeds they're reading and what kind of information they're getting, because for my liking, this is just all very biased. It's just, it's a trend. Let's just rubbish the streaming services. Let's make sure that everyone needs to pay per game. Like, you're literally sending the game industry into the Stone Age. Think of the benefits that Diablo had, for instance, and all the other games. I mean, to be fair, Diablo wasn't day one release on Xbox Game Pass, but being able to watch your showcase events, then communicate to the development team, then do them as early as possible to the streaming service. Okay, Diablo is not a good example. I apologize. I should have said, let me think, Starfield, the best example. Huge hype. The game sold in big fashion, and lots of people bought special edition with Xbox Series X and S consoles, and all the other niceties that came together. Huge benefit. They said that there never has been great access to any of the games prior to that release through Game Pass, and that's just a fact. There have been problems with the game ever since, and some people complained recently it doesn't have enough content or so, and it didn't matter. It was a huge success, and Game Pass definitely helped that title tremendously in every way, and we are now expecting a brand new update as well as the DLC in September. And again, the game is going to be staying on Game Pass, and I don't understand what is the problem that some people have with those streaming services. I can't stop thinking this is coming from some section of the industry, maybe even attached to Sony to a degree. Well, should actually name names. Coming from some section of the industry, some people feel it'd be much better if we're still selling the old physical product. Look, think what happened to CDs. Think about what happened to music which was sold on vinyl. And think about how many people have gone down the route of digital downloads. You do not want that to be happening to you. And that has been avoided because video game industry was a step ahead compared to the music industries. I just ask people to remember that. They were still selling CDs for £16 in Britain, where people downloading music off the internet for a few pence each. It's just completely insane. Banking and cashing on the fact people will find the new technology to be too expensive, and therefore the new technology will fail. People not buy new consoles or the new gadgets in order to play such. It's nonsense. It doesn't work like that. You've got to be forward thinking. Anyway, I digress somewhat, and let me just see if we have anything else which is of interest. Well, we've heard that Hades 2, the sequel, early access is available on PC, and that kicked off earlier this week. If I'm not mistaken, I've seen our friend Mika streaming it. She has early access, and that's Supergiant Games, and they said it kicked off, that's right, a couple of days ago via Steam and the Epic Store. So that's just on PC, and they're also planning a launch for console-based versions of the game, and more information will be shared later on that front. So PC gamers get the access first. So that's really good news. If you play the game, you'll know it's a very, very enjoyable, very good one. Then you have, just remind myself, I was so immersed in this discussion about Xbox and its redundancies that I forgot to tell you about the games I'm playing at the moment. And that's generally something I tell you even before I start with the news. So number one is Apex. Apex has a new season and also has a new legend, new character, new playable character. And I played not a lot, but a couple of hours in the course of this week. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It looks so beautiful on a PlayStation 5. Dense graphics, very illuminated, beautiful images, fantastic colors. The characters are always lovable, and some good crews I worked with. I had one victory and quite a few top 5s, so very, very happy, even with people who played through the random selection. So I'm not sure whether they really worked on algorithm or the gamers to be selected better on kind of squad finder, but it's worked for me. So that was one game. Then Broken Age is the game I already introduced and talked about, an indie title, a really wonderful, quirky game that kind of focuses on various types of family activities. It's a feel-good game and really funny, like a proper animated film. You would have walked in and then you played all the characters and you did funny things. And then most importantly, let me think, I told you about all the other ones I played last week, but this week Kona 2 Broom has been released. So in view of its release, I've gone down the route of downloading both games and then playing them back to back. So at the moment, I'm not playing the sequel, which came out 2 days ago, but I'm playing the original game that I never finished in the past. and it's cold, it's tricky, it's puzzly, it's it's a tricky old game, but very enjoyable. It's a detective mystery based in Canada in the early 1970s, investigating all kinds of strange happenings in a very, very cold part of the country. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you will be having some trouble in finding the right way to the right destination. So very enjoyable. It's a kind of game you want to play before going to bed. Play it for about 45 minutes, an hour, then you fall asleep and you go back to it the following day. It has a chilly aura about it, as you'll see, and really good graphics. And as a narrator, it's very similar to what you get in film noir, the hardboiled dialogue and telling you about all these kinds of people who perished and weird occurrences in the neighborhood, which is very remote and very quiet. So definitely highly recommend it to everyone. And don't forget, 2 days ago, I should say yesterday, it's not 2 days ago, Kona 2 Broom was released on Game Pass day 1. So talking about the Game Pass, you can just subscribe and download. And then really excited about Senua. Senua will come out, that's Hellblade 2, on the 21st, and I have an article here indicating what is going to be in it, and we know that everyone is really, really excited. So you got, first of all, release date, and that is on the 21st of May. And I think the best description or the best introduction to the game indeed was done during the Developer Direct, which I watched today, and I was astonished by things that I've seen there, and the way they sort of introduced the title and everything associated with it. So you know that initially it'll be on X and S and then PC, and I think later it will be also accessible through Xbox Cloud Gaming. Well, actually it's going to be accessible on day 1, and at launch it's going to be an Xbox exclusive, so nothing on PlayStation. And also, like I said before, it is coming out on day 1, so you can get it on the Game Pass. And then there is going to be no physical release, no copy physical release of Senua. You can get it just through digital downloads, and maybe in the near future they will be offering special editions that will contain other items and be sold obviously for a few £100, but at the moment it's just a digital download. The cost of the game is going to be $50 in the US and roughly the same in Britain. If you are a subscriber to the Game Pass, you are not going to be paying anything but the subscription fee, of course. And then the question there is, what's the story going to be like? Well, they've said nothing about the story, and we've heard a bit that you have her as a Celtic warrior who is suffering from psychosis, and she's traveling to Iceland to put down the Vikings who raided the village and enslaved the people back in Orkney. So she came from Orkney to Iceland, and they said giants have plunged the land into complete chaos, which has allowed violent Dragors to sweep through various settlements Senua will discover. And also, one thing they did say in there, and it hasn't been said or mentioned in this article, is that the game is extremely brutal. And when they were asked what's the reason for that, it was a lot more brutal than the first one. They said, well, we wanted to make it an ultra-realistic survival experience. Her existence is under threat both ways, from her mind, through psychosis, as well as the enemies that are attacking her at all times. So we wanted to make sure that the fight is really brutal, and it's only through the brutality that she is able to be conquering the world and defeating the enemies that have been very much plaguing her own environment in Orkney. And I guess there is also a creed through which she wants to fight psychosis, and therefore she will need to fight it with ferocity and vigor. And they said that the actual length of the game is similar to the original, so 6 to 8 hours of experience. It's shortish, I think. I don't agree with 8 hours. You have, if you play the game, many situations there with some very difficult bosses, and you will be having some difficulties in eliminating them, particularly if you're playing on a high difficulty level. That will take you a bit of time. So I think 8 hours is just a straightforward run. It's like a walkthrough, but I don't really think that is likely to be a good picture of what you're like to be facing. And then visually, I think it's quite different to the game 1. You'll find that Senua had aged, and the overall environment is more ultra realistic, and you'll have pretty much the same sort of activities to complete, walking around, exploring the environment, finding certain items which will be telling you parts of the story, and then battling the enemies. So will it be running at 60 FPS? No, it won't. It will be on 30 FPS on Xbox Series X and S. And they said that 30 FPS is more cinematic and it works better for everyone. They wanted to prevent any form of lag, stutter, any sort. The first game worked beautifully. The graphics were mouth-watering and the movement was so placid. You know, it's like so natural that you could thoroughly enjoy everything, all activities and the battles as well. We had to play, played the game with my younger brother, and we had to replay some of the bosses many times. They were very difficult, and you have to master on the console the movement to which you are evading and then attacking, evading, attacking, ducking, diving, evading, attacking, ducking. Yeah, you'll find it for yourself. Anyway, you have still about a couple of weeks. Was that let me see, the 8th, the 20th. Yeah, about 2 weeks before the game's launched, so you can just crack on with the first game completed before then. And when you complete the game, you unlock the documentary on how the game was made, and then you hear a bit about the character, psychosis, and all the other things. It's very interesting. So I have achievements. There will be some list, but they've not told us anything about it. We don't know really what number of achievements there will be. And then that's about it. We do not have anything else about Senua, so mark the date in your diary, 21st of May. The big news coming out of Remedy is that they have been terminating or cancelling one of their recent projects. And this was a multiplayer project, and now they are going to be doing something else. Apparently, Kestrel, previously codenamed Vanguard, was a premium cooperative multiplayer which was being worked on by a small team from Remedy. And then they said they have a second multiplayer project in development codenamed Condor, and that Condor is using the Control universe. Control was the very successful game a few years back, also accessible on, well, in fact both, on Sony and Xbox. And on Xbox you get the premium, the Ultimate Edition, which you can play. So I really recommend everyone to try Ultimate Edition. It's on Series S and X. Really great graphics, and it's a very immersive. I mean, if you're familiar with Remedy, like Alan Wake and both 1 and 2, you'll know what the games are like, and it's the same sort of aura. It's a bit of supernatural, a bit mysterious, a bit unnerving, and you know, good storytelling. And codename Kestrel showed early promise, but the project was still in its early concept stage. Our other projects have advanced well and are moving to the next stages of development, and increasing focus on them provides us with benefits. So they also gave some updates on Max Payne and Control 2. So Control 2 continues in the proof of concept stage, so they're still working on the initial parts, and the plans for the sequel are very ambitious. We've seen good progress both in the designs and the game build, and then we are going to be updating you within the next few quarters. So we want to identify key elements before doing anything else, and we don't want to really provide any news at this stage in addition to this. So it's still, I guess, doing the very basics. And they said that Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake has now gone into the production readiness stage. I can't wait for that. Max Payne is such a good game. I don't know whether you played it, but dig it up, buy it on Microsoft or Sony, and make sure it plays such a good game. And then once they create a remake, that will be almost certainly one of the best games of the year. modern present day and age graphics and new in-game mechanics and the story, which is brilliant. It's going to be a proper film noir style action adventure game. Can't wait for it, really. Be absolutely terrific. And they said that they gain clarity on the style and scope of the game, and they have a very well organized big team working on it, and we are really convinced that this shall be a huge success. Well, lots of the games have been huge success, so we had news about Helldivers the other day. I don't know why everybody wants to jump on the bad news, and this whole thing about PSN network needing to be equated with the account. So within 24 hours they changed course. They said nobody needs to do that, and suddenly from extremely negative reviews now they're getting extremely positive reviews. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess many gamers felt listened to. They felt that, as they stood on a box and shouted at the world, the words of wisdom, their rage, their anger was heard and then acted on. So that's of no surprise to me. Yeah, so we'll come to the end. A couple of more news that came to me during the last 24 hours. They have Microsoft and CI Games strike deal for 2 new Xbox Game Pass editions. So let's see what these editions are. Curious to see. That's right. Following a rumor about Lords of the Fallen coming to Game Pass, and that is now being confirmed. Really excited. Lords of the Fallen is a great game, and I watched the other day something related to, I think it was the sequel or some new DLC. It looked really spectacular, so I really want to play it as soon as possible. And what's the other one? Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2. That's the one as well. Yeah, I don't know where you play Sniper Ghost Warrior, but the sequel is equally good. And generally, the Sniper series I thought enjoyable for anyone who likes stealth. If you are into Battle Royale, that's not going to be a cup of tea, but stealth, absolutely. Your bread and butter. They've not confirmed the dates, but I think the arrival is probably more or less imminent within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Otherwise, we'd have no rumors spreading. Cate Blanchett is the new Borderlands movie, so wonder what activities and events we are going to be having there. And Eli Roth is directing it. I mean, he's a well-known horror director, and curious to see whether this game is going to be a huge success. Well, let's hope so. Kevin Hart as Roland, Jamie Lee Curtis as Stannis, Cate Blanchett is Lilith, my favorite character, and Claptrap, voiced by Jack Black. When is the film going to come out? August the 9th. August the 9th, so that's not too far away. It's about 3 months away or so. What else do we have? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 +4 remake was rejected in favor of more Call of Duty content. Yet more bad news for Activision, my god. And it's claimed that Activision preferred to see Vicarious Vision function as a support studio instead. Let's see. Yeah, they pitched a second remake for the third and fourth games, but these plans were nixed in favor of the developer working as a Call of Duty support studio. That's according to video game historian Liam Robertson at Did You Know Gaming via VGC. And he said that Vicarious Visions occasionally plan to include THPS 3 and 4 in the remake before the studio realized how big the project was. So he settled on adding some handling features from the later games to reflect the way people remember the old Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games. And the improvements from THPS 3 seemed to bleed into people's memories of the first two, so eventually it became clearer that we didn't have time for more than 1+2, so the idea that we'd continue on and release 3 and 4 in some fashion was on the table. So they passed the pitch so Vivi could assist on Activision's biggest franchise, Call of Duty. Well, surprise, surprise. And the studio was eventually absorbed into Blizzard as a support team in April 22 and rebranded to Blizzard Albany. In contrast, Toys for Bob recently parted ways with Activision Blizzard, and then it's reportedly reached a deal with Microsoft to fund its next title. So it looks like the Tony Hawk franchise is dormant for now, but there are several other skateboarding games that are coming out soon, and these games are what are they? Skate Sim and Skate XL, and they will be providing a lot more realistic approach to the genre. And then EA Skate Series will be relaunched as a free-to-play title, and that will be at some point in the near future. Alright, my friends, I think that's probably it for today. That's all I wanted to tell you. As you could see, I'm also a bit rattled by the Xbox layoffs, and talked about this quite a lot yesterday and today. Not sure what's going on there, not really clear about certain facts, but I explained everything as to why I think some of these events are taking place, and also I guess I gave you a picture of my own views on all of that. I just think generally the way things are at the moment is a bit like walking through a treacle. You know, you get at the stage where the prices are reaching the ceiling, and then sooner or later there's going to be a massive correction, huge crash, and that's affecting everyone. Video gaming is no exception, and a lot of people are suffering within the industry, and we need to wait and see what happens next. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed some of my words of wisdom and some of my musings and ramblings and all I said. If so, ping us a message. If you disliked it intensely, please argue with me and disagree with me as well. Ping us a message too, be it here on Twitch or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else. Remember, I'm supporting Mind. I'm running a charitable fundraiser on my channel through my streams. Make sure you go to my panels, click on them, and donate so you can contribute towards that process of saving lives, which is what the people who work for Mind produce every single day. They help fractured lives. They help people who are suffering from emotional difficulties, psychiatric problems, people who are suffering from psychiatric illness. Fractured minds are very, very hard to repair, and their volunteers and professionals do this every single day, 24/7, around the country, 7 days a week. So make sure you support them, you donate, because any of us, under certain circumstances, could require that type of assistance. So thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I wish you all a very good evening, and I shall see you all very soon. Take care.